Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to discuss the latest developments here in Israel, in the Gaza Strip, in Yemen, Iran, other areas around the globe with direct implications as well as indirect implications to Israel, it's always important to remember that 580 days ago, on October 7th of 2023, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates launched their heinous crimes against the state of Israel. And on that day, unfortunately, they also managed to kidnap over 250 hostages. 59 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. Let's now turn to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, let's start by focusing on the Gaza Strip. Overnight, President Donald Trump announced that within the next 24 hours, there may be some announcement to be made with regard to the Gaza Strip. Nothing, of course, is in points of fruition, from what I understand at least. But nonetheless, it seems that a certain proposal was delivered to the Islamist Hamas by both the Egyptians and the Qataris. And right now, we're waiting for an answer before what may occur, not necessarily immediately, but Israel's already pre-planned launch of Gideon's chariots.
So, Jonathan, as you know, all American officials are by definition junior to the president and subordinate to him. And therefore, when such issues arise as to what exactly did he mean and what is he going to announce soon, if he can deliver on his promise, the answer would be, I can't get ahead of the president. I may be able to explain and expand on what he said later, after he reveals whatever it was that he wanted to share with us. But right now, of course, it would only be speculation, and it would be pointless for us to try and ask ourselves and our audience for sure what the president meant. But it is obvious that is in less than a week, he's supposed to be in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. And therefore, he wants to get to the Middle East with the announcement already behind him, and to reap the benefits of whatever progress is to be made, either in the Israel-Gaza dimension or as part of a larger American progress report having Saudi Arabia normalize relations with Israel some day after plan for Gaza and the like. What we can say right now, but again, this is a bit jumping ahead of your plan for this program, is that there are reports of either direct or indirect contacts between Syria and Israel. And that means that maybe there are also contacts in the Israel-Gaza issue, which we are not aware of.
We will touch later on the matter of those reports with regard to indirect contacts. I think we can provide some insight to that. But nonetheless, before that, elaborate a little bit on his trip. He's traveling to Saudi Arabia. After that, he has a couple of other legs. He's not coming to Israel in this trip, which is similar to his previous travel during his 45th term in office.
Yes, that's true. He's trying to separate the Gulf issues. And for many years, we, at least since the Islamic Revolution in Iran, we have tried to shift from calling this body of water the Arabian Gulf rather than the Persian Gulf. And now, apparently, the Trump administration, following its decision to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, now it is changing the way they characterize the Gulf from Persian to Arabian. But whatever you call it, this is separate from the Arab-Israeli conflict or the Levant. And yes, you are right. When he went 8 years ago to Saudi Arabia as his first trip abroad to this, what was it, the Dance of Swords and other typical ethnic shows or events, he did not come to Israel. That came later, a year later or so. But then again, he can change his mind. And because he said he's not coming to Israel or to Egypt, and obviously not to the Palestinian Authority, at the last moment, they can simply decide to come here for a short visit.
Well, there were attempts to propose such a travel with the Israeli Minister for Strategic Affairs talking with the White House Special Envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, but President Trump came out and made his statements on this matter to say that no, he's not coming. But nonetheless, he is traveling also to the Emirates, to Qatar. Is he also going to Turkey? I wasn't sure about that part, but nonetheless, that also may be part of the discussion. But also joining our panel is Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense. It's great to see you, General. I'd like to immediately ask you if we may revert to the Gaza situation. There are deliberations, ongoing deliberations, not only deliberations, but planning in process for the delivery of humanitarian aid to the non-combatant population of the Gaza Strip as part of the looming operation in the Gaza Strip. These discussions and the plan is a joint American-Israeli plan in which they hope that international aid organizations would deliver the aid to the IDF, Coordinator for Government Activities, that then would distribute in specific locations within Gaza the aid to the various clans and families, something that, of course, they are seeking to circumvent Hamas from exploiting that aid for the purpose of then selling it to the population and levying a certain tax upon it that then is utilized, those funds, of course, for the purpose of hiring additional people into their ranks that are quite depleted at this point. What can you tell us about that, and to what degree are those plans already in advanced stages, since I understand that there's some opposition coming out of the United Nations?
Well, indeed, Jonathan, from the IDF point of view, there are two main efforts now we have to remember. The first one is the fight itself within Gaza. There was at the beginning of the weekend of last week, basically the IDF got the approval of his plans by the Israeli cabinet, and we can look at it kind of a periscope operations within the Gaza Strip, and also the intensity is going higher and higher, and this is what the IDF is starting to do. And also the IDF announced that is, of course, main goal is to bring back the hostages, and then, of course, the defeat of the Hamas. From the humanitarian point of view, also the Israeli, the IDF stated that it won't be an Israeli soldiers that would be doing this job, so therefore it should be someone else. As you mentioned, it could be those organizations. Of course, that the IDF would be there to defend them, to make sure that they are not being armed in any way. But the plans is, or I would say, this is something that is being now considered. What would be the best place, the best way of doing it? Once again, not the Israeli soldiers, but other civilian organizations. And the IDF would be, of course, making sure that they would be safe in doing that.
Mr. Olin, I was about to ask this of General Gavish, but he's in uniform, so I'll ask you. Uh, to what degree is the coordination also being implemented together with the Egyptians, who are, of course, uh, deployed along the border of Gaza from their border side on the Rafah border? Is there close coordination on those matters?
So, as you say, the Egyptians are close to the southernmost part of the Gaza Strip. That is Rafah, a bit north of this area of Rafah and the so-called Philadelphia corridor. There is the Muasi. This is a strip of mostly sandy real estate next to the Mediterranean shore, where many of the refugees or displaced people from northern Gaza are now being sheltered in tent cities. So the Egyptians do not have access to these parts. Of course, should Israel or others decide to bring in food and other goods through the Rafah passage, through the Rafah checkpoint, then it has to be coordinated with Egypt. But there is also another matter which is derived from your conversation with General Gavish. And this is the dilemma. One does not want to have Israeli soldiers in touch with the population, even if Hamas doesn't shoot at them. The mob could try and get hold of the deliveries, and then the soldiers will have to fire at them for self-defense. It could get disastrous to either side. And therefore, one of the solutions is to get contractors, either the international organizations to which you referred or some private company. But the problem is that you are not going to endanger your men in uniform, but you also cannot trust these people to the fullest extent. And only the other day, it turned out that a private Israeli contractor on another mission of trying to get some maintenance or the removal of some vehicles which were stuck, that their hired help, who happened to be Bedouins, Israeli Bedouins, they dismantled some of the weapons and tried to smuggle them, probably for criminal purposes, but just as well could turn out to collaborate with Hamas. So you can't really solve the problem either way. Your own people are reliable, but you don't want to risk them. The other people you try to hire are not so trustworthy.
Regrettably and unfortunately, where there is money, there is crime. And so it seems that those activities are happening also in the vicinity of the Gaza Strip at this point in time. And not only there, in other locations, be they combat zones or non-combat zones, both. It is a plague, and that is something I think everybody can agree upon. But General Gavish, let's shift gears to the situation with regard to freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, and of course, talking specifically here about the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe. U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated that he is very keen on the Houthi proposal to cease fire, and that he will honor them by their word, as he put it. Ironically, one of the leaders of the Houthis came out and stated that it wasn't the Houthis who came to the Americans and said, "Oh, we would like you to stop," but rather it was, according to their narrative, either you stop firing at us or we will start firing at Saudi Arabia while you're visiting there. And that was the trigger that brought about the arrangement. But of course, I would rather believe the American side than the Houthi side in this context, considering the statements that have been following coming out of the Houthis for years now have always been underlying deceit. So it is quite clear that they are just merely spouting propaganda. But nonetheless, they have stated that they do intend to continue firing at Israeli ships and at Israel proper. Um, Israel is obviously preparing for this. And to what degree can we expect our American allies to be by our side, considering the fact that the guarantee is about freedom of navigation to all ships?
Well, first of all, when we are talking about the Americans on our side, when it comes to the defense of Israel, they're always on our side. Whatever would be the agreement, anyway, when it is defending Israel, and if Israel is being attacked in this world of missile defense, we are together, shoulder to shoulder, defending Israel. So this is for the defending efforts since the attack, although the Israeli attack. We have to remember that we attacked twice. The Houthis, after they attacked here in Israel on Ben Gurion airport, there were 2 strikes by the Israeli Air Force. The Houthis said a lot. They didn't do so much yet. They did try it with a UAV that was intercepted. According to international press, there was a missile that they shot and fell short in Saudi. But in general, they didn't do too much yet. So we'll see where things are going. Of course, from the Israeli side, we are fully prepared on the defense, and if it would be needed, also in the offense. So in this kind of war, sometimes time matters, and you have to wait and see where things are going. With regard to your comment, I also, of course, believe the U.S. side, not the terrorists in South Yemen. And once again, also on this, we see exactly where it is taking. We have to remember and say it again and again that the story of the Houthis, the story of freedom of navigation, this is not something that Israel is the only one who is suffering for it. The Egyptians are even suffering more than us. Of course, the Saudis and others. We have to remember that 9% of the world water travel would go through the Suez Canal, which is not what is happening now. So therefore, there is other in the Middle East that this situation is affecting them. And so the answer, I think, still, it's not only a question between United States and the Houthis. It is an international question, and we'll see. Also here, time will tell us where are we going.
Absolutely. Well, I will mention something about the Egyptians. We won't dive into this. We'll discuss this maybe on another program of Jerusalem Studio or something of sorts. But the Egyptians, for the first time in history, held a joint aerial exercise with their Chinese counterparts. Something that, of course, speaks volumes, which is an understatement. And I wonder what type of signal this is to the Americans at a time when obviously we're seeing the Chinese also prior to that holding exercises with the Russians, announcing the closer ties on the security levels with the Italians. But nonetheless, the Chinese is an escalation from a strategic power competition level, something that the Americans, I'm sure, are not very happy about. But Mr. Oren, after the announcement by the Omani foreign minister, who released a statement articulating the process that led up to the arrangement or understanding between the Houthis and the United States, the Qatari foreign minister came out and stated that he warmly welcomes the sisterly Omanis who have come out, or the brotherly Omanis in this case, who've come out and stated this great achievement, and he called upon all Arabs to focus on the Palestinian and Syrian issue to be on one front against the state of Israel while President Trump visits the region. So they are preparing, at least making an effort to prepare a certain unified front to confront Israel on those two issues. What can you tell us about that?
So, what you just brought out was the complexity of Middle East intrigue, not only politics. First of all, regarding the timeline, on March 15th, the US Central Command, CENTCOM, started Operation Rough Rider against the Houthis. And as we know, by now, 1,000 targets or so have been hit. This is even without the two strikes earlier this week. However, on March 31st, President Trump came out with a public statement suggesting to the Houthis that if they stop shooting at US vessels, the US will stop its operation. 10 days later, a Houthi spokesman tried to divert attention from this proposal and said that in order for the Houthis to stop firing, the US must put pressure on Israel to stop its campaign in Gaza. This is something totally separate. And then a month or so passed, and through the Omani mediation, they got back to what President Trump suggested in late May. Now, the Qataris are obviously envious at the success of Omani mediation, because they have tried to mediate between Israel and Hamas and failed up to now, mostly. And of course, it's the US and Egypt too taking part in the mediation. As far as the unified front you mentioned, they are not on the same side as Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, the other two stops on Trump's itinerary. They're on the side of Turkey, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and Hamas. So they cannot play an honest broker when Israel wants to cut a deal with Hamas.
Just to explicitly state that the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is a non-state actor. It's a Muslim Brotherhood originating out of Egypt, but it is spread across the world. Unfortunately, a plague upon the world. And it is a vanguard organization seeking to dominate the world with Sharia law and to impose their religious beliefs upon all of civilizations, not only one civilization. And that was one of the issues in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, which brought about at the time, during the previous Trump administration, again, a lot of pressure by Saudi Arabia and the Emirates to even boycott and blockade the Qataris for a while. That was resolved ultimately by Trump's Middle East team, which demanded, of course, the Qataris to take a step away from the Muslim Brotherhood, which it pledged to do. It seems that it's not been very successful in fulfilling that pledge, but that's a story for a different time. Since we don't have very much time left, I will ask General Gavish, if you can, in 1 minute, give us an understanding of the current state of play from Israel's perspective in Syria, particularly with the deployment of a first medical unit, a forward medical unit not far from the village of Hadr in southern Syria, alongside a Druze village.
Well, indeed, Jonathan, the relations, as we talked about it more than once, within the Druze in the south part of Syria and Israel are being tightened. And of course, humanitarian aid, we could say this is something that Israel was providing, and now even more intensive. And this is what I believe what is expected. This is what the Jewish community here in Israel are also asking from the Israeli government to see how they could help their brothers in Syria. So this is something going on, but the big context is still there that Israel would do whatever is needed in order to keep its interest. And this is the rearming of Hamas by the Hezbollah, a non-third-party actor that would be in this region and will be the one that would put us in kind of a danger of doing whatever we need to do in the Middle East. So those are still our interests, and of course, the border between Israel and Syria.
Indeed. Well, on the 1st of May, the French government and Syria signed a new deal, actually on behalf of CMA CGM, a shipping company that is going to continue operating the Latakia port, which it has also been doing under the Assad regime since 2009. This shipping company, owned predominantly by a French-Lebanese family, has roughly 77% or somewhat less than that. The rest is owned by a Turkish family and to a lesser degree by a couple of banks in Europe. They have invited Abu Muhammad al-Julani or Ahmed al-Shara to visit in Paris in breach of EU, US, and UN sanctions that put a ban on travel, but apparently it does not apply to the French president, Emmanuel Macron, who defied those orders and invited him nonetheless. Mr. Oren, in one sentence, since we are out of time.
Yes, the game that Giuliani or Shara is playing is quite delicate. He has talked about or confirmed that there have been what he called indirect contacts with Israeli authorities. Some people in Israel say that they were not indirect, but rather that they were direct talks between Syrian emissaries and Israeli security and defense officials regarding the security situation in southern Syria, the Israeli deployment there. But up to now, there has been no announcement of an agreement.
As far as I know, it was just a relaying of messages from one side to the other through Emirati mediation, but we'll leave it at that. I'd like to thank General Gavish and Mr. Oren for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.